Alrighty, hello everybody and welcome to science class. Let's go ahead and get started with our lesson of the day. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to have a great lesson today. Today we're talking about clouds. Yay! Clouds are probably one of my favorite topics of all time. If I hadn't been a science teacher, I might want to be a meteorologist because I just think clouds are fascinating. Woo, sorry. And also super beautiful. So if you ever need some time to just calm down or feel better, getting outside and watching the clouds go by is one of the best ways to soothe your soul. Okay, so let's get going. Our objective of the day is I can describe different types of clouds in the atmosphere. So first things first, let's talk about what are clouds even made of? Well, you already know that clouds are made of tiny bits of water and also ice, right? And ice is just solid water. That would be invisible if they were viewed individually, so smaller than a raindrop, right? Tiny, just individual molecules of water. But when we see them all together, that is what determines the size of the cloud. So when all of those particles come together and all of those water molecules come together, that's when we see a cloud, right? And there's also little tiny bits of dust and other types of gases trapped in between those molecules. So how many particles come together is what's going to determine what type of cloud we see. Okay, so how do clouds form? Clouds form when surface heating, so heat from the sun, forms warm air below cool air. So you can kind of see in this picture, right? The warm air is forming closer to the ground. And as the air rises, it goes from high to low pressure, so it expands and it cools, right? There's more pressure down low, down here. So as the molecules are rising in the atmosphere, just like we talked about yesterday, the layers get thinner and thinner as you go towards outer space, right? So the density is decreasing. The molecules are spreading out as the air rises into the atmosphere. And then once the air's temperature reaches its dew point, or in other words, reaches a low enough temperature, 32 degrees, that it can turn back into or not 32 degrees, sorry, that would be turning back into a solid, but at the temperature where it can turn back into a water droplet, then that water vapor is going to condense back into water. So this is just, it's evaporation and then condensation. We kind of talked about that last week when we went over the water cycle in the hydrosphere. Okay, so first question on your Google form. Now's your chance to pause the video. And the first question I want you to think about, now that we know what clouds are made of and how they form, tell me, are clouds a part of the hydrosphere or are they a part of the atmosphere? Last week we learned about the hydrosphere. This week we're talking about atmosphere. Where do clouds fit in? Which sphere are they a part of? Or are they a part of both? Pause your video and give me an answer on your Google form titled Fill Out During Class. Okay, and once you've filled out the form, you will press play, and here we are, we're back again. Hopefully you wrote something along the lines of both. Clouds are part of both. They're part of the hydrosphere because they are made of H2O and they have water molecules in them, but they're also part of the atmosphere because they are in our sky, right? They're in the air that surrounds our planet. And they are constantly being formed and changing inside of that atmosphere. So they're really a part of both. Okay, so clouds form at 3 different levels: low, medium, and high, right? Close to the earth, a little bit farther away from the earth, and far away from the earth, closer to space. Right? Clouds are made in different shapes and size, but are always the color white, right? So their shade and whether we see them as gray or dark just depends on the amount of sun that we see in the clouds. Same with when we see pink or orange or purple clouds. that's not the actual color of the cloud. That's just the color of the light reflected in the cloud. So clouds are white and puffy. Each type of cloud is specific to its height level. So at the low, medium, and high levels, different types of clouds are forming at each of those levels. And clouds usually occur within the troposphere. Oops, spelled that wrong. Should be PH. Troposphere. And the troposphere is the lowest level. Remember, we learned this yesterday. It's the lowest level of the atmosphere that's closest to the Earth. So the troposphere is the one that we think about when we think about weather and clouds and even air pollution, right? A lot of it is concentrated in the troposphere, in the air that is closest to the crust where we live. Okay, so it was a man named Luke Howard was the first one to start naming clouds. And we give clouds names just like we give animals names, just like we give names to plants. We give names to things in order to understand them better, in order to classify them and sort them, right? To start comparing and contrasting their features. Excuse you. Sorry, this is a candid science show, you guys. There will be dogs barking in the background. I apologize in advance. So just like animals and plants, a lot of things that we name and classify are based on old languages like Latin or Greek roots. So this guy, Luke Howard, started naming clouds based on Latin roots. Okay, so the reason, I know those of you who have been in class with me before, you know that I spend a lot of time talking about prefixes and the meanings of small pieces of words. Okay, because the more that we understand prefixes and suffixes and roots and can identify those root meanings inside of words, the better we become at reading and writing, right? That's what gives us the power to identify words that we don't know, is when we can piece together what their roots and prefixes mean. Then we can start to understand what the whole word means, even if we've never seen that word before, right? So as we're learning about these different cloud types, I'm going to spend a lot of energy focusing on those prefixes and the roots in the words, because that way you will be able to know what the word means, even if you don't have an example in front of you. Okay, so when we are naming clouds or classifying, sorting clouds into proper categories, we're naming them based on two things: their shape and their height. Okay, those are the two different ways that we classify types of clouds: what they're shaped like and what level they're in, right? That low, medium, or high level of cloud. And those levels are still all within the troposphere, right? Mostly. Some clouds maybe barely are scraping the stratosphere, the next layer up above the troposphere, but most clouds, like 95% of clouds, are going to be tucked in that troposphere. So the low, medium, and high levels are all within that first layer of the atmosphere. Okay? Here we go. So first, let's talk about their height. These prefixes are going to tell you the height of a cloud. Okay, so really high clouds are going to have the prefix cirro or cirrus. Okay, really low clouds are going to have the prefix strato. Okay, so low clouds are closer to the earth, closer to us, closer to the crust, and high clouds are further away, closer to outer space. And then you have this mid-level cloud called alto, which is somewhere in between, right? Somewhere in between low and high. Okay, so we have cirro, alto, and strato in that order. And maybe you can say them with me. I'm going to use a really high voice, a medium voice, and a really low voice so that we can try to remember these three prefixes. Okay, so say it with me. We're going to go cirro, alto, strato. I wish my voice could get lower, but that's about as low as I can go. Cirro, alto, strato.